Imagine uncovering a hidden truth about yourself that could transform the way you see your entire life. A truth so profound that it challenges everything you thought you knew about who you are and why you behave the way you do. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, revealed a life lesson so deep and essential that most people never even glimpse it. This lesson is not just about understanding others or even yourself on the surface level, but about diving into the mysterious depths of the human psyche to discover the forces that shape your identity, your choices, and your destiny. In a world obsessed with external success and social masks, Jung's wisdom calls us to explore the unseen parts of our minds, the shadows, the archetypes, the collective unconscious, to find a sense of wholeness and meaning that no surface achievement can provide. What if the key to living a fulfilled and authentic life lies in embracing your inner contradictions and unknown depths? This video will guide you through Jung's revolutionary insights on human behavior, showing how his ultimate life lesson can unlock a powerful path to self-discovery, healing, and transformation. Prepare to challenge your assumptions and embark on a journey inward that could change everything. This simple, haunting question lies at the heart of Carl Jung's life work. Most people go through life assuming they know themselves, their likes, dislikes, values, and beliefs. But Jung believed that this surface-level identity, what we call the ego, is just a tiny fragment of the full human being. It's like mistaking the tip of the iceberg for the whole structure. The real depth of who we are lies hidden, often deliberately buried in the unconscious. And yet, that hidden self influences everything. Our relationships, our fears, our dreams, and the meaning we search for in life. Jung didn't start as a rebel psychologist. He began as a student of Freud, working with dreams and unconscious thoughts. But unlike Freud, who saw the unconscious mostly as a dark pit of suppressed desires, Jung believed it was something much more profound, a vast, intelligent system trying to guide us toward growth. Not something to fight against, but something to listen to. So, what was the question Jung kept returning to, again and again? It wasn't just, who am I, but rather, who am I underneath the person I pretend to be? This might sound dramatic, pretend to be. But for Jung, every person wears a mask. He called it the persona. It's the role we play to fit into society, the polite co-worker, the confident influencer, the obedient child, the respectable adult. It helps us survive and succeed socially. But here's the catch. If you start believing you are the mask, you lose sight of your deeper self. And that's where the problem begins. Most of us go through life adjusting the mask, polishing it, improving it, updating it for others to admire. But underneath, there are parts of ourselves we've ignored, hidden, or outright denied. Jung called this the shadow, not because it's evil, but because it's simply what we've pushed into darkness. So the question becomes, what have I left in the dark? Maybe it's your anger, maybe your creativity, maybe your deep sadness or your yearning for something greater. Whatever it is, Jung believed you cannot truly grow unless you face it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, he said, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that. How many people blame life, or luck, or others, without realizing their own inner conflicts are shaping their outer reality? How many people choose partners, careers, or habits, not from conscious wisdom, but from unresolved patterns in their unconscious minds? This is why Jung's question is so powerful. It invites you to go deeper. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about uncovering yourself, peeling away the ego, the persona, the protective layers, and meeting the raw, complex, contradictory being within. Jung didn't believe in shortcuts. He wasn't selling quick happiness or success. His message was hard but honest. If you want to live a meaningful life, you have to go into the depths of your own psyche. You have to explore the dreams that confuse you, the emotions you hide, the behaviors you repeat without knowing why. And above all, you have to listen. The journey isn't easy, and that's why most people never take it. They distract themselves with entertainment, ambition, and even spiritual bypassing. But deep inside, something remains restless. That's the voice of the unconscious, calling you home. Jung often described this inner voice as the self, not the ego self, but the true self, a whole balanced version of you that exists beyond your current understanding. It's not just who you are, it's who you're meant to become. And this self doesn't shout. It whispers, through dreams, through moments of synchronicity, through unexpected emotion. It wants to be seen, it wants to be heard. But first, you must ask the question, am I really who I think I am? For Jung, this was the ultimate starting point, the beginning of real transformation. Most people never ask it. They live their lives on autopilot, shaped by forces they don't understand. But if you're willing to ask, and brave enough to listen, everything can begin to change. Because the journey of knowing yourself isn't just about self-awareness. It's about becoming yourself, fully, honestly, and courageously. And that is where Jung's real lesson begins. Carl Jung wasn't just a psychologist. He was a cartographer of the soul. While others were studying behavior and measuring reactions in a lab, Jung was drawing maps of the unseen world inside us. He believed that the human mind wasn't just a machine of thoughts and memories, but a living, breathing ecosystem made up of symbols, stories, dreams, and shadows. If Freud opened the door to the unconscious, Jung walked inside, lit a lantern, and started exploring its many rooms. Born in 1875 in Switzerland, Jung grew up surrounded by spiritual tension. His father was a Protestant minister, but his mother claimed to speak to spirits. This dual influence, logic and mystery, shaped Jung from the beginning. He studied medicine and psychiatry, and eventually met Sigmund Freud, who became his mentor. For a time, they worked closely together, but Jung felt Freud's theories were too focused on sexuality and repression. Jung saw something bigger at play. He believed that the unconscious mind wasn't just a storage bin for shame and desire, but a sacred space filled with meaning and direction. One of Jung's greatest contributions was his idea of the collective unconscious. He suggested that beyond our personal experiences, we all share a deep layer of the mind that holds ancient images, or what he called archetypes. These archetypes are universal patterns like the mother, the hero, the wise old man, the trickster. You can see them in myths, fairy tales, and dreams across every culture. Jung saw them not as random symbols, but as deep truths about what it means to be human. Imagine the psyche as a vast ocean. Your personal unconscious is like the water near the surface, filled with memories, emotions, and forgotten thoughts. But dive deeper and you enter the collective unconscious, where stories older than you are still alive and shaping your life. Jung believed we carry this ancient knowledge inside us, and it speaks to us through dreams, symbols, and moments of synchronicity. Jung's approach to psychology was not about diagnosing disorders or fixing people. It was about helping them become whole. He believed that healing happens when we integrate all parts of ourselves, the good, the bad, the unknown. He called this process individuation, the journey of becoming your full, authentic self by facing your inner world. For Jung, the point of life wasn't perfection, it was wholeness. To do this, we must confront what we've hidden or rejected, the parts of us we don't want to see. This is the shadow, and Jung taught that everyone has one. It's not always evil or dangerous, it's simply the part of ourselves we deny. And until we face it, It will control us from the background. If you've ever found yourself judging someone harshly, overreacting to a situation, or repeating the same painful pattern, chances are your shadow is at play. But Jung's work wasn't just dark and serious. He had a deep appreciation for art, imagination, and spirituality. He saw dreams not as meaningless noise, but as messages from the unconscious, filled with symbols meant to guide us. He painted, wrote in journals, and even built a stone tower with his own hands to reconnect with his inner self. He believed that everyone has a creative, inner wisdom trying to reach them, and that most people simply don't know how to listen. Jung also gave us the idea of personality types, which inspired tools like the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI. He believed that people are naturally inclined toward certain ways of perceiving and processing the world. Introversion versus extroversion, thinking versus feeling, sensing versus intuiting. Understanding these types wasn't about putting people in boxes. It was about recognizing your natural tendencies and how they shape your life. At his core, Carl Jung believed that the journey inward is the most important journey we'll ever take. He didn't promise that it would be easy. In fact, he knew it would be hard. But he believed that the pain of facing yourself is better than the numbness of running from yourself. Jung wasn't trying to build a perfect theory. He was trying to offer a mirror to the soul. And what he found was that behind every fear, every dream, every symbol, and every conflict, there is a hidden message calling us back to who we really are. He was not just a man of science, but a spiritual explorer, mapping the unseen world with courage, honesty, and curiosity. And thanks to him, we now have the tools to do the same. Every morning you wake up and step into a version of yourself. You remember your name, your job, your relationships, your goals. You move through your day with a sense of who you are and who you're not. This version of you is what Carl Jung called the ego, your conscious identity. It's the part of the mind that says, I am this and I am not that. It's the voice narrating your life, making choices and trying to keep things under control. The ego is essential. Without it, we couldn't function in the world. It helps us define boundaries, make decisions, and protect ourselves. But according to Jung, the ego is not the whole story. In fact, it's just a small island floating in the vast ocean of the psyche. The problem arises when people confuse the ego for the entire self, when they believe that the conscious I is all there is. Jung saw the ego as the center of consciousness, but not the center of the total psyche. Imagine your mind as a circle. The ego is just a small dot in the middle, surrounded by the unconscious, a huge and powerful force that influences you in ways you don't even notice. The ego thinks it's in charge, but often it's more like a passenger who doesn't realize there's a hidden driver steering from below. This illusion of control is why so many people feel confused or lost in life. They believe they are making choices freely, but often those choices are driven by unconscious fears, unmet needs, or deeply buried wounds. You might think, I'm choosing this career because I love it, when deep down you're trying to please your parents. Or, I'm avoiding that relationship because it's not right, when in fact you're scared of intimacy because of childhood pain. The ego doesn't lie maliciously. It just doesn't see the whole picture. That's why Jung emphasized the importance of humility. Not in a moral sense, but in a psychological sense. To grow, we have to realize that the ego's view is limited. It can't see everything. It filters reality through what it already believes. It clings to habits and identities to feel secure, even if those identities are incomplete or false. For example, someone might build their ego around being the strong one, always dependable, never asking for help. This becomes their identity, But if they ignore their own vulnerability, they disconnect from a crucial part of their humanity. Or another person might identify as the smart one, always needing to be right. That becomes a mask, and anything that threatens it feels like a personal attack. The ego loves labels because labels feel safe. But Jung warned that clinging to ego identity keeps us stuck. True growth comes when we start questioning the story we've been telling ourselves. When we ask, is this who I truly am? Or is this just who I learned to be? That's the first step in awakening. Realizing that the ego is not the full self. It's just the part of us that knows it's awake, but it's blind to what lies beneath. Jung didn't want people to destroy their ego. That's a misunderstanding. He wanted people to expand beyond it. The ego must exist, but it shouldn't be the king. It should be part of a larger system in service to something greater, the self. The self, for Jung, was the whole of who we are. Conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, known and unknown. When the ego begins to serve the self instead of trying to control it, we start to live in a deeper harmony. But letting go of ego control feels like death. It means admitting that we don't fully know ourselves. It means accepting that we have blind spots, that we've made choices for reasons we didn't understand. It's uncomfortable. It shakes our identity. That's why so many people resist this journey. It threatens the illusion of control. Yet Jung believed this inner confrontation was the key to true transformation. You don't lose yourself by going beyond the ego effect you find yourself. Because beyond the ego's limited identity lies a deeper truth. You are more than the roles you play, more than the thoughts you think, more than the story you tell. You are a vast, evolving psyche trying to become whole. And the ego? It's just the beginning. Inside every person, there's a part they don't want to admit exists, not because it's evil or dangerous, but because it doesn't fit the image they have of themselves. Carl Jung called this part the shadow, the hidden side of your personality, made up of everything you've rejected, denied, or pushed away. It's who you are when no one's watching. It's the thoughts you suppress, the feelings you avoid, and the desires you're ashamed of. And it's also the key to your deepest growth. The shadow isn't just a negative force. It's simply the parts of you that you've decided, consciously or unconsciously, don't belong in the light. That could mean anger, jealousy, or selfishness. But it could also mean confidence, power, or creativity if those traits were discouraged in your early life. For example, if you were raised in a home where being assertive was called rude, you might suppress your natural ability to lead. That strength becomes part of your shadow, buried and forgotten. We all form a shadow. It begins in childhood. To be accepted and loved, we learn which behaviors are rewarded and which are punished. Slowly, we build a version of ourselves that fits into our family, culture, or religion. But everything that doesn't fit, even if it's good, gets pushed into the unconscious. We don't get rid of these parts. We just lose touch with them. But the shadow doesn't stay quiet. It shows up in indirect ways. In the way we judge others, the triggers that make us angry, the people we can't stand, and the patterns we keep repeating. Have you ever disliked someone instantly without knowing why? Or found yourself overreacting to something small? That's usually your shadow being projected onto the outside world. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. In other words, what you hate in others often reveals what you haven't faced in yourself. Facing your shadow is hard. It means admitting things you've tried not to see. It might feel like failure, weakness, or even shame. But Jung believed this confrontation was absolutely necessary for growth. You can't become whole by ignoring parts of yourself. You have to bring the shadow into the light. Not to destroy it, but to understand it. Let's be clear. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean acting on every dark impulse. It means becoming aware of those impulses and understanding where they come from. If you feel rage, it doesn't mean you should hurt someone. It means you need to ask, what wound is this rage protecting? If you envy someone, it doesn't mean you're bad. It means you're longing for something you've denied yourself. When you integrate your shadow, you stop being a prisoner to it. The things that once controlled you from the dark now become part of your conscious power. The energy you once used to repress yourself becomes available for creativity, passion, and strength. Jung called this shadow work, the courageous act of facing your own darkness so you can live more fully in the light. But most people avoid this. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It's easier to keep pretending, easier to blame others than to look within, easier to wear a mask than to be real. Society often encourages this avoidance. We're taught to be nice, polite, successful, to keep things positive. But real self-growth is not always pretty. It's raw, honest, and sometimes painful. That's why Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow is not your enemy. In fact, it's trying to help you. It holds the parts of you that were once cast out, and it wants to bring them home. It wants you to be whole, not perfect, but whole. And when you integrate it, something powerful happens. You become grounded. You stop being so easily shaken. You understand yourself, not just the good parts, but all of it. And this is what Jung meant by the deeper truth of who you are. You are not just the persona you show the world. You are the full spectrum of light and dark, joy and pain, courage and fear. The shadow holds your wounds, yes, but also your hidden strengths. And when you dare to face it, you don't just find the parts you've lost, you begin to find your true self. Imagine walking onto a stage every day. You know your lines, you know your role. You've played it for years, maybe even your whole life. That role, that image, that identity you present to the world, Carl Jung called it the persona. It's your mask, your social face, the version of you that meets society's expectations so you can function, fit in, and feel accepted. We all wear a persona. It starts developing in childhood. You learn what pleases your parents, what earns praise, what gets you love or attention. You begin shaping yourself to meet those standards. In school, maybe you're the smart one or the quiet one or the funny one. At work, maybe you become the professional, the achiever, or the people pleaser. These roles help you survive socially and emotionally. Without a persona, we'd be vulnerable and unfiltered. And society doesn't often reward that kind of rawness. But here's the danger. The persona, while useful, can become a prison. Jung believed the persona was necessary, but only as a tool, not a truth. The problem is, most people mistake their mask for their identity. They get so used to the image they've created, calm, competent, lovable, strong, that they forget there's a whole other self beneath it. Over time, they don't just wear the mask, they become it, and that's where the suffering begins. When you over-identify with your persona, you start editing your behavior to fit it. Even when it no longer reflects who you truly are, you ignore feelings that don't match the role. You hide struggles that might ruin the image. You suppress desires, silence opinions, and smile when you want to scream, all to maintain the illusion. The cost? Disconnection from your authentic self. Jung saw this as one of the great inner conflicts of modern life. We're told to be put together, to stay positive, to brand ourselves socially and professionally. But underneath, we're anxious, confused, angry, lonely. And we don't know how to express that without cracking the persona. So we fake it, we perform. And slowly, we lose touch with the deeper self that lives behind the mask. This is why so many people feel hollow, even when their lives look successful. The job, the house, the image, it's all there. But inside, something's missing. That emptiness isn't failure. It's the soul's quiet cry. You've forgotten who you are. Jung didn't say to throw away the persona. He said to become conscious of it, to ask, what mask am I wearing? Why did I build it? What am I hiding behind it? The goal isn't to become maskless in public. That would be impractical. The goal is to know the difference between the mask and the true self. When you become aware of your persona, you stop letting it define you. You can use it when necessary, like wearing a uniform, but you don't confuse it with your full identity. You can say, this is my role right now, while still staying connected to the deeper parts of you that the role doesn't show. And when you know your persona, you start to notice the masks others wear too. You begin to see that most people are just as guarded, just as afraid of rejection, just as tangled in roles they didn't fully choose. That awareness creates empathy and freedom. It also opens the door to shadow work, because once you know what the persona is hiding, you can begin to explore the parts of yourself you left behind. Maybe you've hidden your softness to seem strong, or your anger to stay likable, or your dreams to be realistic. These buried parts become the shadows, and until they're acknowledged, they silently shape your life. But when you face them, when you integrate what's been repressed, you start to move toward wholeness, and suddenly the mask no longer controls you. You control it. Jung believed that liberation begins when you realize you are not your persona. You are more. You are deeper, messier, more beautiful, and more human than any mask could ever show. And only when you start living from that truth can you begin to feel fully alive. At the heart of Carl Jung's psychology is one powerful idea. You are not meant to become perfect. You are meant to become whole. This journey toward wholeness is what Jung called individuation. It's the lifelong process of discovering who you truly are beneath the roles, masks, fears, and wounds you've collected throughout life. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to your most authentic self, the person you were always meant to be. Individuation begins with a simple but difficult realization. You are more than your ego. The conscious you, your thoughts, preferences, and daily identity, is only a fragment of the full psyche. Jung believed that the self is much larger. It includes the unconscious, the shadow, the persona, the anima, animus, and all the inner forces you've yet to understand. To individuate is to gradually bring these hidden parts into awareness, to make the unconscious conscious. But this process isn't comfortable. It's a kind of inner alchemy. To begin individuation, you must be willing to break down the false structures you've built to survive. That often starts with a crisis. Something shakes the ego's illusion of control. It might be a loss, a failure, a deep conflict, or a growing sense that life no longer feels meaningful. Jung didn't see this as a breakdown. He saw it as a breakthrough. The ego is being humbled, softened, and invited into deeper contact with the self. As you begin to confront your shadow, you uncover emotions, desires, and fears you've buried for years. This isn't just therapy, it's transformation. You might discover that the traits you once hated in others live inside you too, that your weaknesses are actually sources of power, that the bad parts of you are often misunderstood or wounded, not evil. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Individuation is the process of no longer being controlled by unconscious patterns. When you meet those patterns with awareness, they lose their grip. You begin to choose, not react. You start living from a place of freedom, not fear. But individuation is not a straight line. It's messy, cyclical, and full of contradictions. Jung believed that wholeness includes opposites, light and dark, masculine and feminine, order and chaos, reason and emotion. Becoming whole means accepting and integrating both sides. It means realizing you can be strong and vulnerable, logical and intuitive, peaceful and passionate. This is not about balance in a superficial way. It's about integration, the ability to hold tension between opposites without collapsing into one side. That's why individuation often involves a deep inner struggle. You might feel lost, confused, or even shattered. But Jung believed that every step of this journey is necessary. The parts of you that feel broken are often just waiting to be reintegrated. Dreams, symbols, and imagination play a big role in individuation. Jung saw dreams as messages from the unconscious, not random noise, but meaningful guidance from the deeper self. When you begin to interpret your dreams, notice synchronicities, or pay attention to the symbols that show up in your life, you're actually listening to the parts of yourself that have no voice in waking life. Through this dialogue between the conscious and unconscious, something powerful begins to emerge. The self, the true center of your being. Unlike the ego, which wants control, the self wants unity. It doesn't divide you into good or bad, success or failure. It sees the full picture. It knows your path is not about pretending to be someone else. It's about discovering the person you already are underneath all the noise. Many people never take this journey. They stay in the surface world of roles, labels, and personas. But those who do choose individuation find something rare: depth, a sense of meaning that doesn't depend on outside validation, a peace that comes not from avoiding pain but from understanding it, a strength that comes from knowing and accepting your full self. In the end, individuation is not about arriving somewhere perfect. It's about walking the path of your own becoming. It's a journey into your depths, through the chaos and contradiction of the psyche, towards something more real than any mask you've ever worn, your authentic whole self. Carl Jung believed that every person carries within them an unconscious image of the opposite gender. For men, this is the anima, the inner feminine. For women, it is the animus, the inner masculine. These aren't just gender traits or personality quirks. They are symbolic energies that represent parts of the psyche that have been repressed, ignored, or left unexplored. Jung saw these figures not only as psychological forces, but as bridges to our deeper self. In simple terms, the anima and animus are inner guides. They influence how we relate to others, especially in romantic and emotional relationships, but more importantly, they shape how we relate to our own inner life. For example, a man may project his anima, his inner feminine, onto women, idealizing them or fearing them, depending on his own psychological state. Similarly, a woman may project her animus, her inner masculine, onto men, perhaps seeing them as overly rational, dominant, or distant. These projections create distortion. We stop seeing people as they really are and instead react to them based on our own inner unconscious images. This leads to romantic illusions, conflicts, misunderstandings, and even heartbreak. But Jung believed that this wasn't a mistake. It was a necessary part of the individuation process. These projections are opportunities to discover something within ourselves that we haven't yet made conscious. Let's start with the anima, the inner feminine. In men, the anima represents emotion, intuition, creativity, receptivity, and nurturing, qualities often discouraged in traditional male roles. When undeveloped, the anima can lead a man to be moody, irrational, or overly dependent on women for emotional expression. He might fall in love with an image, not a real person, and become disillusioned when reality doesn't match the fantasy. But when a man confronts and integrates his anima, something extraordinary happens. He gains emotional depth, empathy, and a stronger connection to his inner world. He becomes more whole, not less masculine, but more human. His relationships deepen because he no longer looks for a woman to complete him. He brings his own inner feminine to the relationship. Now consider the animus, the inner masculine in women. The animus represents logic, willpower, strength, reason, and structure. When unconscious, it can show up as harsh inner criticism. The inner voice that says, "You're not good enough, you must be perfect," or "You can't trust your feelings." It may also cause a woman to project onto men an expectation of control, dominance, or emotional unavailability. But once a woman begins to integrate her animus, she steps into her own authority. She develops confidence, clarity, and the ability to act in the world without needing external validation. She can be assertive without becoming rigid, and grounded without losing her emotional sensitivity. Like the integrated anima in men, the conscious animus in women leads to balance and empowerment. It's important to understand that anima and animus are not about literal gender. Jung used the language of masculine and feminine symbolically, not biologically. In today's world, where gender roles are more fluid, we can think of anima and animus as inner polarities, the yin and yang of the soul. Every human being, regardless of gender identity, contains both sets of qualities and must integrate them to become whole. The anima and animus also play a huge role in creativity and spiritual growth. The anima may appear in dreams as a muse, a mysterious woman guiding a man toward unknown depths. The animus may appear as a wise old man, a voice of reason, or a powerful figure urging a woman to speak her truth. These images are not random. They are your psyche's way of calling you inward, of nudging you toward the full expression of your being. Jung believed that integrating the anima or animus is one of the most transformative stages of individuation. It allows you to stop seeking wholeness in others and begin cultivating it within yourself. Your relationships become less about filling a void and more about sharing what's already complete within you. Ultimately, anima and animus are not just psychological theories. They are invitations. Invitations to meet the parts of yourself you've disowned, to balance logic with feeling, action with reflection, strength with softness. When you embrace both sides, you don't just grow, you evolve. You become a person of depth, presence, and inner harmony. And that, Jung believed, is the essence of becoming fully human. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is the heart of shadow work, one of Jung's most important and life-changing ideas. The shadow is the part of yourself you try to ignore, deny, or hide. It holds the traits, thoughts, desires, and emotions that your conscious mind doesn't want to deal with. But here's the hard truth. The more you repress your shadow, the more power it has over your life. The shadow isn't necessarily evil. It's just unconscious. It includes all the parts of you that don't fit the image you've created for yourself. If you see yourself as a kind person, your shadow may hold your hidden anger. If you want to be seen as strong, your shadow might contain your fear or vulnerability. It's made up of everything you've been told is unacceptable, bad, or weak. But those traits don't just disappear. They go underground where they fester. They come out in strange ways, like sudden anger, jealousy, anxiety, or self-sabotage. You might project your shadow onto others, blaming them for the very qualities you've buried in yourself. This is why people can be quick to judge. Often, we hate in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. Shadow work is the courageous act of turning inward and saying, "What am I hiding from? What part of me have I locked away?" It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming honest. When you face your shadow, you reclaim the energy you've spent trying to suppress it. That energy becomes power, a creative, emotional, and spiritual strength you never knew you had. The shadow often shows up in dreams, projections, emotional triggers, and life patterns that repeat. If you keep attracting the same kind of toxic relationship, if you sabotage your own success, if you feel a constant low-level anger or sadness, your shadow may be trying to speak. Jung believed that life brings us the exact experiences we need in order to face the parts of ourselves we've ignored. But shadow work is not easy. It requires deep self-reflection and radical honesty. You have to be willing to sit with discomfort, to admit things you'd rather not admit, to look at your jealousy, your fear, your rage, your shame, and instead of pushing them away, you learn from them. You ask, "What are you trying to tell me?" When you do this, something incredible happens. You start to feel more alive. You stop being at war with yourself. You begin to integrate the parts of you that were once split off. And that's what Jung meant by wholeness. Not being only good or positive, but being real. A full human being with light and dark, joy and pain, love and anger. All acknowledged, all accepted. One of the greatest benefits of shadow work is freedom. The things that once controlled you, your anger, your guilt, your fears, begin to lose their grip. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself, to chase validation, or to hide your truth. You stop reacting blindly to situations and start responding with awareness. This shift doesn't just change your inner world, it transforms your relationships, your creativity, and your sense of purpose. Shadow work also deepens your compassion for others. When you understand your own darkness, you become less judgmental. You recognize that everyone has a shadow, everyone is struggling with something hidden. This realization builds empathy and connection. Instead of seeing people as good or bad, you see them as whole, just like you're learning to see yourself. Jung believed that we cannot become truly conscious, truly alive, unless we meet our shadow. Avoiding it keeps us stuck in shallow living. Facing it opens the door to depth, authenticity, and inner strength. You don't have to be afraid of your darkness. It's not there to destroy you. It's there to complete you. In the end, shadow work is not about fixing yourself. It's about embracing yourself, fully, fearlessly, and without shame. When you do that, you reclaim your true power. You stop running. You stand in your truth. And that's where real transformation begins. Carl Jung introduced a fascinating concept called synchronicity, which challenges our usual way of understanding how the world works. Most of us are used to thinking that events happen because of cause and effect, that everything has a logical explanation. But Jung noticed that sometimes things happen together in ways that feel deeply meaningful, yet have no clear cause and effect connection. These are what he called meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. Imagine thinking about an old friend you haven't seen in years, and suddenly they call you out of the blue. Or maybe you dream about a symbol, like a bird or a key, and then the same symbol appears in your waking life in an important way. These moments aren't just random chance. They feel like the universe is communicating with you, guiding you, or confirming something important. Jung saw synchronicity as evidence that there's a deeper order beneath the surface of reality, a connection between your inner world and outer events. It's as if your unconscious mind and the cosmos are in conversation, creating meaningful patterns that defy rational explanation. Why does this matter for understanding human behavior? Because synchronicity shows us that our psyche isn't isolated from the world. Our inner states, thoughts, feelings, dreams are connected to external events in mysterious, powerful ways. When we're open to these moments, they can guide us on our path to individuation, helping us make sense of confusing or challenging times. For example, you might be struggling with a difficult decision, feeling stuck and uncertain. Then, unexpectedly, you encounter a book, a conversation, or even a random phrase that suddenly makes everything clear. Jung believed these synchronicities are like signposts from the self, the deeper center of your being, nudging you toward growth and wholeness. Recognizing synchronicity requires a shift in perception. Instead of dismissing strange or surprising events as just coincidence, you learn to see them as part of a meaningful pattern. This awareness can deepen your connection to life, increase your intuition, and help you trust your inner guidance. Jung also linked synchronicity to archetypes, universal symbols and themes that exist in the collective unconscious. When an archetype is active in your life, synchronicities related to that archetype often appear. For example, if you're going through a transformation, you might see images of death and rebirth in dreams, movies, or conversations, all synchronistic messages pointing to your inner process. But synchronicity isn't just about magical or mystical experiences. It's also a practical tool for self-awareness. By paying attention to these meaningful coincidences, you can uncover hidden aspects of your psyche, notice when you're out of alignment, and find clues to your true path. Jung cautioned that synchronicity should not be used to avoid responsibility or to predict the future. It's not about superstition or fate. Instead, it's about opening to a deeper level of reality, where meaning and connection exist beyond logic. When you embrace the idea of synchronicity, you start to see life differently. You realize that your experiences aren't random chaos, but part of a meaningful whole. You become more attuned to your inner voice and more willing to explore the unknown. In essence, synchronicity is an invitation to trust that you are part of a greater story, one that unfolds with purpose and mystery. It reminds us that human behavior and experience are not just mechanical reactions, but part of a profound dance between inner meaning and outer reality. And in that dance, your true self is waiting to be discovered. One of Carl Jung's most groundbreaking and profound ideas is the concept of the collective unconscious. Unlike the personal unconscious, which contains memories, emotions, and experiences unique to an individual, the collective unconscious is a deeper layer of the psyche shared by all human beings. It's an invisible web that connects us beneath the surface, holding universal patterns and symbols that transcend time, culture, and personal history. Think of the collective unconscious as a vast, inherited reservoir of psychic material. It is not something we learn or experience personally. It's part of our human inheritance, embedded in the very structure of our minds. Jung believed this collective layer houses what he called archetypes, primordial images and motifs that shape our perceptions, behaviors, and dreams. Archetypes are like the fundamental blueprints of human experience. They include figures such as the mother, the hero, the trickster, the wise old man, and many others. These archetypes are universal symbols that appear across myths, fairy tales, religions, and dreams throughout all cultures. When you see these patterns repeat in stories from vastly different times and places, you're witnessing the influence of the collective unconscious. Why does this matter for human behavior? Because these archetypes operate beneath our awareness, influencing how we think, feel, and act in ways we often don't realize. For example, someone may feel compelled to embark on a heroic journey during a time of crisis, mirroring the hero archetype's call to adventure. Or a person might struggle with a shadow figure, a representation of the trickster archetype, that disrupts their life to teach important lessons. The collective unconscious explains why certain symbols or themes resonate deeply with us, even if we've never consciously encountered them before. A dream of a nurturing mother figure might stir comfort and security because the mother archetype is embedded in the collective psyche. Similarly, stories of rebirth and transformation resonate because these themes reflect universal experiences coded in our unconscious. Jung's theory also sheds light on how cultural myths and religious stories are not just fictional tales, but expressions of the collective unconscious. They reveal the shared inner world of humanity and guide individuals in their psychological and spiritual development. The collective unconscious also plays a critical role in the process of individuation. As you journey toward wholeness, you begin to encounter and integrate these archetypal energies within yourself. This is why you might experience powerful dreams, visions, or sudden insights that feel bigger than yourself. You are connecting with the collective heritage of the human spirit. However, because the collective unconscious is so vast and mysterious, it can sometimes be unsettling. Archetypes can manifest in extreme or destructive ways if they are not integrated consciously. For example, the shadow archetype, when unrecognized, can lead to inner conflict or projection onto others. Similarly, the trickster can cause chaos if left unchecked. Understanding the collective unconscious invites us to recognize that our personal struggles are part of a much larger human story. It reminds us that we are not isolated beings, but connected to something ancient and profound. This awareness can bring comfort, meaning, and perspective during difficult times. Moreover, the collective unconscious points to the possibility of shared healing and growth. When societies recognize these common archetypal patterns, they can foster greater empathy and unity. Myths, rituals, and art become tools for reconnecting with this deeper layer of the psyche and for expressing what is often hard to put into words. In daily life, becoming aware of the collective unconscious encourages you to pay attention to recurring themes in your dreams, stories, and emotions. These are not random but clues from your deeper self, reflecting universal human truths. In essence, the collective unconscious is the hidden tapestry that weaves all humans together. It holds the seeds of wisdom, creativity, and transformation. By exploring this invisible realm, you tap into a source of strength far greater than the individual ego, a timeless connection that invites you to understand yourself as part of the vast unfolding story of humanity. Carl Jung introduced the idea of the persona to describe the social mask or role when present to the world. Think of it as the face you show to others, the version of yourself that fits into society's expectations, rules, and norms. The word persona actually comes from the Latin for mask, reminding us that this part of our identity is constructed, not our true self. From the moment we enter the world, we learn to wear different masks. We act a certain way at work, differently with friends, and yet another way with family. These roles help us navigate social life, gain acceptance, and function within groups. Without the persona, social interaction would be chaotic, as we wouldn't have a way to signal who we are and how we fit in. However, Jung warned that over-identifying with the persona can be dangerous. When we begin to believe that the mask is who we really are, we lose touch with our deeper self. The persona is a necessary tool, but it's only a part of the whole. If we only live as our persona, we become superficial, disconnected, and ultimately unfulfilled. One reason this happens is because the persona is designed to protect us. It helps us hide the parts of ourselves that we fear others will reject. Our weaknesses, doubts, desires, and fears. It's like a costume we put on to avoid vulnerability. The problem is, wearing this mask too tightly can cause inner conflict. We might feel like we're living a lie or that our real feelings don't matter. Jung believed that the journey to wholeness involves recognizing the persona for what it is, a mask, and learning to balance it with the true self underneath. This doesn't mean abandoning social roles or pretending to be radically authentic all the time. Instead, it means becoming conscious of when you are wearing the mask and why. When you become aware of your persona, you can start to question the roles you've accepted without thought. Are these roles really yours? Or are they imposed by culture, family, or fear? For example, someone might play the strong, unemotional role because they believe vulnerability is weakness. But by examining this persona, they can begin to allow themselves more emotional honesty. Jung also pointed out that the persona can become a source of projection. We tend to assume others are as put together or as perfect as our own masks suggest. This leads to misunderstanding and loneliness because everyone is hiding parts of themselves behind their own persona. Another important insight is that the persona can limit creativity and growth. If you only show the world a narrow version of yourself, you may miss out on opportunities to express your full potential. True creativity often emerges when you step beyond the mask and reveal parts of yourself that are unexpected or unconventional. In relationships, the persona can create distance. People may fall in love with your mask, not your real self. This can cause frustration and heartbreak when the mask slips or when the relationship requires deeper intimacy. Jung encouraged people to seek relationships where they can gradually drop their masks and be seen for who they truly are. Balancing the persona means finding a healthy middle ground, a mask that allows you to function socially but does not imprison your spirit. It's about being flexible and authentic, knowing when to wear the mask and when to take it off. Ultimately, the persona is not the enemy. It is a necessary and useful part of human life, but it should never become a prison. By recognizing the persona, you free yourself to live more genuinely, relate more deeply, and move closer to the real center of your being, the self. This understanding is a vital step on the path Jung laid out, not to become a perfect image, but to become a whole, integrated, and authentic human being. The mask serves its purpose, but it's only when you meet the self beneath that you find true freedom. At the core of Carl Jung's psychological theory lies the concept of the self, a profound and transformative idea that represents the totality of the psyche. Unlike the ego, which is just the conscious part of our personality, the self encompasses everything, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, persona and anima, animus. It is the center and the circumference of the whole psyche, the source of balance, integration, and ultimate wholeness. Jung viewed the self as more than just a psychological concept. It is a symbol of our deepest potential and our innate drive toward growth. It is not static, it is dynamic, unfolding throughout life as we confront challenges, integrate hidden parts of ourselves, and move toward individuation, the process of becoming our fullest, most authentic selves. Understanding the self means recognizing that your identity is not limited to the small I you identify with day to day. The ego tends to think it is the whole person, but Jung emphasized that this is only a fragment. The self is much bigger, including your unconscious drives, forgotten memories, shadow aspects, and spiritual core. It is both within you and beyond you. Jung often described the self through powerful symbols, such as the circle, the mandala, or the divine child. These symbols express the unity, completeness, and harmony that the self embodies. In many religious and spiritual traditions, this is the God within, the sacred center of being where opposites merge and dualities are resolved. The journey toward the self is not easy or straightforward. It requires courage to face your shadow, honesty to embrace your true feelings, and openness to the mystery of your inner world. It involves balancing conflicting forces, reason and intuition, masculinity and femininity, order and chaos. As you integrate these parts, you move closer to wholeness. This process of individuation brings a deep sense of peace and purpose. Instead of being torn apart by internal conflict or lost in the roles you play, you begin to feel grounded in your true self. Life becomes more meaningful because you are no longer driven solely by external expectations or unconscious impulses. Instead, your actions align with the deeper guidance of the self. Jung also believed that the self has a healing power. When you connect with this center, you find the strength to overcome trauma, anxiety, and inner turmoil. The self provides a stable foundation from which you can face life's uncertainties with resilience and grace. One key aspect of the self is its relationship with spirituality. Jung did not see spirituality as separate from psychology. Rather, he believed that the self is the source of spiritual experiences, visions, and insights. Moments of profound awe, connection, or transcendence are expressions of encountering the self. It's important to understand that the self is not an endpoint or a fixed state. It is a lifelong journey of growth and transformation. There will always be new depths to explore, new shadows to face, and new aspects of yourself to discover. The self invites you to embrace this ongoing adventure with curiosity and compassion. In practical terms, connecting with yourself means cultivating self-awareness, engaging in reflection, and paying attention to your dreams, symbols, and inner experiences. Practices such as meditation, journaling, art, or therapy can help you deepen this connection. Ultimately, the self is the heart of Jung's ultimate life lesson. That wholeness is possible, and it is the natural goal of human life. By journeying inward and integrating all parts of yourself, you find the fullness of your being, the harmony between your inner world and outer life. The self teaches us that we are not fragmented or broken, but whole beings, capable of growth, healing, and transformation. It reminds us that true freedom lies not in escaping our complexity, but in embracing it fully. And in that embrace, we find the ultimate meaning of life itself. Individuation is arguably Carl Jung's most profound and life-altering concept, the process by which a person becomes a fully realized, integrated individual. It's not about conforming to external standards or achieving superficial success. Instead, it's about the deep inner work of discovering and embracing all parts of yourself, both the light and the dark, to become whole. Jung believed that every person carries many conflicting forces within: the conscious mind and the unconscious, the persona and the shadow, the masculine and feminine energies, reason and emotion. Individuation is the lifelong journey of balancing and integrating these opposites. It's the process of harmonizing your inner world so that you can live authentically and with purpose. This path is rarely easy or comfortable. It involves facing parts of yourself you may have denied or feared, like your shadow traits, your repressed desires, or your vulnerabilities. It also means questioning the roles and identities you've worn to please others or to fit into society. Individuation calls for radical honesty, an honest look inward without judgment or denial. As you progress, you start to notice recurring patterns in your life, dreams that carry symbolic messages and emotional triggers that point to unresolved conflicts. These are signals from your unconscious guiding you toward growth. Individuation is about listening to these signals and responding with awareness rather than avoidance. The process often involves integrating the anima, the feminine side in men, and animus, the masculine side in women. These inner opposites represent qualities you may have neglected or rejected. Embracing them leads to greater psychological balance and a richer experience of life. Individuation also includes confronting and assimilating the shadow, those hidden or denied parts of yourself. Far from being something to fear, The shadow holds immense potential for creativity, strength, and transformation once you acknowledge it. One of the most important milestones in individuation is the emergence of the self, the core of your being that unites all these disparate parts. The self represents the true center of your personality and the source of inner harmony. When you connect with yourself, you gain clarity about who you are beyond social masks and limiting beliefs. Individuation is not a solitary journey. Often relationships, life challenges, and even synchronicities serve as catalysts for growth. People around you may unconsciously mirror your inner conflicts or support your transformation. Jung saw life itself as a teacher, presenting the lessons you need to become whole. Unlike some spiritual paths that aim for transcendence or escape, Jung's individuation emphasizes embracing your humanity, your emotions, flaws, strengths, and contradictions. It is about becoming a whole human being, not a perfect one. The goal of individuation is not to achieve a static state of enlightenment, but to live a dynamic, evolving life where you are fully engaged with yourself and the world. It brings a sense of freedom from unconscious drives, societal pressures, and internal fragmentation. In practical terms, individuation encourages self-reflection, dream analysis, creative expression, and mindfulness of inner experiences. It asks you to cultivate patience and compassion for yourself as you navigate the sometimes difficult terrain of self-discovery. Ultimately, individuation is Carl Jung's ultimate life lesson, that the greatest journey we can undertake is the journey inward. It's the path to becoming your truest, most whole self, embracing every part of your being and living with authenticity and purpose. Through individuation, you learn that the challenges, contradictions, and mysteries of life are not obstacles but invitations to deeper understanding. The journey may never be finished, but every step brings you closer to the rich, complex, and beautiful person you were always meant to be.